Welcome to the Design Mind Frogcast. Each episode, we go behind the scenes to meet the people designing what's next in the world of products, services, and experiences, both here at Frog and far, far outside the pond. I'm Elizabeth Wood. Today on our show, it's time to talk shop. Malls, department stores, traditional brick and mortar, these are all still a big part of everyday life. But even frequent in-store patrons are increasingly finding themselves buying more items online. And while that's great when searching for exactly what you're looking for, it does take some of the serendipity out of it all. Our guest, Brian Beitler, founder of the video commerce platform Soon and general manager of live shop ventures for Curate Retail Group, has been thinking a lot about how to bring some of that in-store magic to online spaces. From using data to personalize e-commerce to putting video storytelling at the center of shopping experiences, Brian and his team are leaning into the future of retail for brands, influencers, and of course, shoppers. Here's Brian now.
Video is playing an increasing role in every part of our life, and product discovery, product use, product know-how is central to that, and we believe video will continue to grow in its importance, both as a vehicle outside of a retailer's brand to discover products and as the way a retailer shares and tells stories about their brand. So we see video as an explosive part of the future of retail. Hi, I am Brian Beitler, the founder of Soon and the general manager of Live Shop Ventures for Curate Retail Group. The notion of live streaming and video, you've heard about it, it's still emerging, right? It's still fairly nascent in Western markets compared to how it's exploded in the Asian markets. But we certainly see the momentum building. Coresight Research, I think, published most recently that the live stream, video-driven, shopping industry is going to be around $40 billion by 2025. It's about what's useful to the consumer, right? At the end of the day, utility comes in a variety of forms. Entertainment and flash is one of those, and consumers certainly love to be entertained. That's useful to us as people. We need to laugh. We need to have our spirits lifted. We need to smile for sure. But also, it's about how do I use that tool to be more effective? And that level of being practical and authentic in the storytelling is as important as being able to be entertaining and engaging. As you think about how you use video and how you go and use live selling for your brand or platform, you have to be mindful of going, hey, what's the objective that I have for the consumer? Sometimes entertainment can be a core part of it. And sometimes it's going, man, how can I just be useful and provide better understanding of my services, of my products to the consumers, and do it with people who get my consumer and can connect with them and build a relationship.
From a young age, it was clear that Brian was a born salesperson and storyteller, with a knack for making meaningful connections with his customers.
My passion or love for a kind of consumer product started, believe it or not, when I was 6 years old. So I played Little League Baseball, and I loved baseball, but it was not my skill set. What I was really good at was selling the candy bars that we sold to raise funds in Little League. And I remember we had these 2 chocolate candy bars. One was plain, one had almonds in it. And I still remember my sales pitch. Now, to be honest, I don't know that I came up with the sales pitch at 6 and 7 years old. I'm sure this came from my father. But literally, my pitch was, I have this plain candy bar here. You can buy it for just $1. Or I have this other candy bar and I'll throw in the almonds for free. And it got a laugh every time from whoever was at the doorstep, and almost always got a sale. And I thought, this is so much fun. But what I also learned is that when people got something that they loved, it made them happy, and making people happy made me happy. From very early on, how I fell in love with the idea of being able to bring people products and services that made them happy could be an amazing career. One of the things that I think was so unique about Curate Retail Group and our parent company and a couple of the companies we own, QVC and HSN, was their ability for our hosts, our personalities, to build relationships at scale. And that's what we think video allows you to do, to build relationships where it's not just one person that you're interacting with that finds you interesting and valuable and important in their life, but that you can build that with hundreds of people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people at a time. Me and my team are striving to build what we think will be a next generation shopping experience that will further kind of cure retail's leadership position in video commerce. And we hope to build something that will make us the leaders in using video to help brands and consumers make connections and fall in love And in my current role, my hope is to build something new that continues to bring a new, fresh, more innovative way for consumers and brands to discover one another, and a way that allows these young creators to build a livelihood.
During our conversation, Brian shared how he and his team are extending the benefits of video into e-commerce through the platform Sune. That's SUNE. You can find a link to the platform in this episode's show notes.
Sune is the brand of our consumer-facing app. It's now in its beta version. We launched it a couple of months ago and are just in the early forms. But what we've built is this short-form, thumbable, shopping experience where we can bring together emerging and underdiscovered brands and products and the founders behind those brands and products with, really talented young creators that love to tell entertaining and engaging stories about products and engage, hopefully, with Gen Z consumers and help them discover their next favorite brand, their next favorite product, their next favorite experience. We looked out at the marketplace and how young people engage today. Gen Z consumers consume more video content than any other generation before them. They discover everything in those video feeds, from the next life tip to the next best product to the next vacation that they're going to take to the love of their life. Here's what I think is interesting about video. It allows you to do some things that you can't do on the shelf or on a flat PDP page quite as well, right? So let's take a category like kitchen electrics and imagine shopping for that. A lot of that is still bought in a retail experience in a store. Maybe you're in a Target, maybe you're in a Walmart, maybe you're in a Best Buy, right? You're in a retail environment. It's in a box. Like, I can't see it, feel it, touch it, understand it. Video lets that thing come to life, right? You can see how someone uses it, how it might be valuable in your home, how it might fit into the way that you prepare your meals for the week. For me, right, we see video's ability to give you all the information. I can show you what something looks like on multiple body types, or I can teach you how to apply something when you're getting ready in the morning. And so that, for us, is why we think video and v-commerce is the future of e-commerce, is because we think it just enables getting to yes much easier for consumers. And we know that. We know video has higher conversion rate than flat static pages, right? So these are known realities, right? We know on a couple of our sister companies brands, QVC and HSN, we can, sell a lot of product in a few minutes when you can see the way it works, right? So we have evidence kind of in our business model for how this works. We think it's going to influence everything. We think we can build a new way to have this experience that's going to be really fun and engaging for young consumers. But we know it helps consumers make better decisions faster. And we also know it helps those who've created products tell their story better. Because sometimes there's more than just meets the eye to the product. There is, how did they get to that decision? Why does this thing exist? And nothing is better than hearing from a founder telling you their narrative. And video lets you do that. And sometimes they can do that in just a few seconds or a few minutes. I know there are a lot of people on the fence going, man, how do I think about engaging in video? How do I think about live? Should it be on my site? The consumer always moves faster than the company. It's just true and has been true for a very long time. And so as you see these emerging trends, I think the point that I would make here is just getting there early and finding the right people to partner with is super important.
Staying at the forefront of change is important for any industry, and the evolution of product discovery and customer experiences in retail is no exception.
So you can look over the last, 4 decades and watch the way that retail and technologies and forms of technologies evolve. And take malls as an example. In my mind, malls were a physical but a technological innovation on the way that we engaged in shopping, right? We went from being in main streets and small and narrow to being able to aggregate a huge number of potential destinations. And consumers migrated to that form. And it opened our choice and it opened our joy of shopping in many ways, because I could walk through and see things I'd never imagined seeing before that never would have made it to my little neighborhood from a community perspective. You step forward, right? E-commerce then opens that door even wider, and you see the way that the behavior of discovery or shopping now, instead of just shopping the few brands that are in my mall, I can shop the entire globe or the entire country from an experience perspective. What e-commerce is remarkable at is helping you buy stuff. So when you know you want to buy a new dress for vacation, or you need a new bag for travel, or you've got a new skincare concern, man, the internet made buying so amazing because for the first time, you could aggregate information really fast. You could sort through the potential options, and then you could make a decision. And so e-commerce is remarkable for buying. And if you remember when you were going to a physical destination to buying, that sometimes was arduous and not fun because it was hard to find things. Right? I had to go through a lot of stores. It was very spread out. Right? I had to talk to a lot of people to get information because fine print was hard to get to if I was looking at a beauty product. And e-commerce made that amazing. But I will say what e-commerce didn't solve was the joy of serendipitous discovery. Right? For a long time, right? If I ask people and I say, hey, where do you go to browse? Right? Which was also a reason to go to a physical destination, a mall in particular, right? Was sometimes we had no specific idea in mind. We just had some money in our pocket and a few friends and thought, let's go wander and see what shows up. The internet's not very good at that. And even websites today aren't very good at that, right? You've got to go point click. It's not like walking through a physical inspiration where there are mannequins and beautiful tables and windows. So that's one way. So e-commerce evolved and changed the way we could buy, and it made buying so much better. There are other innovations that I think are interesting that took things that were, localized and made them global. So, I love the example of eBay, right? eBay took the classifieds / garage sales and gave you a way to discover them across the country, right? So it was a cool innovation of allowing you to shop across the globe. And it took a core traditional behavior of buying other people's stuff and allowed you to do it at scale and with more choice and with some fun. Or take Etsy, right? Etsy took the Sunday or Saturday noon craft fair, right, at the local church or the local school and said, hey, if you love to buy crafts and you have crafts to sell, you don't just have to wait for that craft event. You can sell that to anybody. And so there are things where I think digital has really been amazing. We at Soon see that opportunity, and part of our vision is not just to build a video platform. We just think video is a really great way to discover things serendipitously. And we said, hey, where can I go window shopping? Online. And you can today, but it's more accidental, right? It happens in TikTok, it happens in Instagram, right? Because brands are putting feeds in, creators are creating, influencers are creating content. And so our hope is we can take this evolution of technology and let you go window shopping with your thumbs, right? But the difference here in our window is unlike a mall, we can personalize every window over time. We can learn the kinds of things you are interested in, the kinds of things that are going on in your life. Maybe you're outdoorsy, maybe you're a yogi, maybe you love beauty products, right? We can learn what's interesting to you and give you windows, that are relevant for you every time, and brands and stores that you can enter into. At the root of this, right, we want to bring joy of, serendipitous discovery and even focused discovery back to, the digital world, right? How can we create a place where shopping is immersive, engaging, entertaining, and that you can see and find new products, new brands, things that you've never heard of before in a format that's relevant, that's familiar to current young consumers.
We're going to take a short break. When we return, Brian will share more about his team's collaboration with Frog and what he calls the 4 C's of business growth.
Hi, I'm Alex D'Agostino, a senior strategist in Frog's San Francisco studio. To help our clients reimagine physical retail, we're focusing on a broad set of consumer needs, from wanting emotional connection to seeking unique discovery and multi-sensorial experiences, to on-demand convenience. Addressing these needs translates into lifetime value, not just in stores, but across channels. Check out today's show notes to download Frog's new report, The Future of Retail, What's in Store for Brick and Mortar. It's time to elevate in-store experiences.
Now back to Brian Beitler, founder of the video commerce platform Soon and general manager of Live Shop Ventures for Curate Retail Group.
Our engagement, right, with Frog was to help us continue to think about ways to innovate and push our experience forward. And so, for us, it was an exciting engagement. Really talented, progressive thinkers that understand how the consumer experience is changing, how the industry is moving, where culture's going. And, the value for us was helping us think about some of our digital experiences and how we might evolve our approach as a brand in that landscape. And so they've been, super valuable in helping to push our thinking forward and to help us get more oriented to being a digital first, company in many respects. We've never had a physical presence. We've always been video and driven by our network channels, our cable and television channels, which have been very successful for us, right? And our goal here was to say, hey, can someone help us think about, how we evolve our overall digital approach across all of our digital platforms, our website, our streaming, right? Our, potential new businesses. So it's been amazing. Some of the stuff that we've talked about, right, was at the forefront of some of the work with Frog and their depth of understanding of how important interactivity is in this experience, how important crafting a personalized experience is, how important it is to enrich storytelling. All of those insights, right, have helped us think about how we move forward across an array of our businesses. The reality is with the explosion of marketplaces, there are more and more places as a brand or as a seller to put your products. There's more and more places for consumers to go to discover those. It's complicated, right? So one of the things about having a store or a brand you love is it gives you a place to go to know where you can find the joy. And as things get more fragmented, I think it gets harder to be able to create those kinds of meaningful connections and meaningful experiences with consumers. That's going to continue to be a challenge for brands and retailers to figure out, hey, how do I find an audience and how do I find meaning and purpose with that audience on an ongoing basis? I think the other thing, right, is the pace of shift and change just continues to accelerate. So again, if we back up a few decades, right, moving from the main street to the mall was a fairly slow process. Like it takes a long time to build a new shopping center, right? Just when you feel like you've tackled the latest, innovation and technology, you're ending up in this place where you have something new going on and it's happening so fast.
Of course, in a digital world, things may seem like they're in a near constant state of change. Yet Brian shares that when it comes to brand and customer relationships, some things will always stay the same.
I'd say some things are very similar from when I started my career to where we are today. One of those is that you have to start with knowing and getting to know your customer. And for me, it's one-on-one conversations with customers. And that first really developed for me, not in my Mattel days, but when I moved to Toys R Us, one of the first things I did, we were right in the middle of holiday season. And I went into a Toys R Us store probably for the first time to have conversations with customers. But I thought, I'm going to start talking to customers. I'm going to find out what they love. I think that's still the same. I think so many brands, marketers, senior executives miss how valuable it is to still have the one-on-one relationship that early shop owners did when retail came into existence. I think the other thing that stayed the same is you have to be connected to what's going on in the culture and what's happening. And I think you have to know how to tell a good story. Those are all the things that are true today. They were true 20 years ago. They were probably true 100 years ago. What's evolved and what's changed, right, is how sophisticated you have to be in your approach. It used to be very simple. Even if I back up a couple of decades, we evolved from a world where, network TV, newspapers and magazines and radio were the primary communication forms to a day where there's an explosion of potential apps and digital outlets to be able to reach consumers. Today, you have to be far more data-driven alongside that kind of personal connection, that kind of intuitive understanding that comes from connecting with your customers. I think the evolution of e-commerce as it sits today, right, there are a couple of things that really still matter and matter a lot, right? Getting your personalization engines, your ability to connect to consumers when they come onto your experience to feel like it's for them matters now more than ever. And I think that has to be something that still remains a top priority, even as these emerging things happen, because consumers are becoming used to every other part of their experience fitting them, right? So if you think about Netflix and the efforts that they put to give you a personalized feed of content of you, or TikTok's algorithm, or your Instagram feed, right? We're becoming so used to, in some way, media-centric companies, which is a place we spend a lot of our time doubling down on getting the right content in front of us, that's raising the bar for retailers and every other sort of services, every other sort of interaction, right? I want the same level of personalization and connection from my financial institution that I get in my social media feed. I think the pressure is on for retailers to find better ways to connect with their consumers and to create more experiences that feel like it's for me and that it's just for me. It's where we think something like Soon or the work that we're doing at other parts of the Curate Retail Group can help in that success factor is by being mindful of those things. And I think the other thing that matters is recognizing consumers love things to be quick, right? fast and relevant matters, right? The notion of the short form and the 6-second ad and all of these things are growing in importance. And I don't see those things changing at all. I think the ability of being able to tell really compelling stories in a much shorter window of time is more important today than it's ever been, and will probably be more important tomorrow than it is today. And so having your teams focused on how can we take our powerful brand proposition, our powerful narratives, our value prop for our specific product or brand, and tell it in a short, interesting way. If you can't help people understand how this is going to be meaningful to them, how it might be meaningful to the world, like, it's really hard to get your business to grow. And brands sometimes have a lot of meaning for a long time, and then they lose that meaning because they continue to tell the same story over and over again. So there's one, first developing your story, and then there's two, understanding to go, hey, does my story need to change? Does my story need to evolve? Because my audience and the world and culture has evolved. And so at the end of the day, I think it's not just enough to know the story that you want to tell, but you have to know, hey, is that story still connecting with your target? Are they still interested in hearing your story the way that you're telling it? Sometimes it may be more than your story that needs to change, right? You may need to change your business, but we've learned how willing consumers are, users are, whatever you want to call them, people are at getting engaged in the process, and they want to be engaged in the process, right? We think, ideas are best when multiple people are involved in the creation of something. Most of the best innovation in the world comes from people coming together and building something new. I don't want to go on a history lesson, but as we think about urban centers coming into existence over the last 2 centuries, it's what changed the acceleration of innovation. We brought people closer together. More people were bouncing ideas off another. That's still true. It continues to accelerate, right? We look at how a platform, an open platform like ChatGPT gets built so quickly. So it makes sense to me, right? It makes sense that ecosystems are developing as the future, and it for us as thinking about how do we innovate in the retail space at QRG. Right? This was one of those things of going, hey, we have to understand and embrace the platform ecosystem model. We know we still are going to have to curate and build a really amazing product, but we know that matters.
Throughout his career, Brian has developed a framework he calls the 4 C's, which are 4 important dimensions to consider when growing a business and staying relevant to consumers.
The 4 C's for me it's just a model for thinking about how businesses can connect and grow with consumers. And they've been a part of the way that I've thought over the course of my career. I've had the good fortune of working with some pretty remarkable brands, the Curate Retail Group being the one I'm with today, and so excited about the work that we're doing here. But these C's are the way I think about how do I understand and how do I find ways to connect? And so I'll give you the C's very quickly. So the first is, what's the company narrative? What's the customer value, right? What's the competitive landscape in which you're playing? And what's happening in the culture, and how does it connect? So company narrative is super important to me. And I think sometimes brands lose a sense of their narrative, right? Which is, what's their why, right? Sometimes, particularly as brands mature, right? Almost every company when it got started had a why. Sometimes the why is very functional. I just need to put money on my table, and so I'm going to open a mechanic shop on the corner, right? Because I got a skill to do that. But oftentimes, right, brands had rich narratives behind why they were started, and sometimes you lose sight of that. And I always find it's valuable as a leader, as a CEO, as a CMO, as someone in the organization, if you can step back and go and say, hey, what's our narrative, right? There's been a lot of talk about purpose, right? Almost every company has a purpose. And a purpose is certainly a part of your narrative, but a purpose is not your narrative. A narrative is a much deeper story that helps to articulate, hey, why are you in business? And then what are all the specific competencies that you have that are valuable in the business that you're in? So that's the company narrative. The customer value is to go, man, how well do I know what the customer values in my industry, in my segment? If I'm in travel, if I'm in apparel, if I'm in financial services, right? Do I have a sense of what the most important thing is in that industry for the customer? And the only way to get that is to talk to the customer. The only way to do that, and to talk to the customer one-on-one. I truly believe it's so valuable when executives spend time one-on-one asking their customers about their story and about what they care about in relation to their business, right? So if you can get that at the core, you got a good sense of your narrative. Now you've got a good sense of the customer narrative, at least in the value, the way they extract value, right? The third piece is to go, hey, who's in the competitive landscape and what are their narratives and what are their skills and how are mine the same or better? I often say you don't have to necessarily be differentiated from your competitors to win, but you do have to be better at the things your customers value most, right? And so sometimes we spend so much time talking about how am I different from my competitors. And I think it's important to understand where your competitors are, but this is why you go through the whole piece, is because it's not always about being different. It's about understanding the customer narrative and go, can I be better at if there's something my competitor does and I can be better at it than them, I can still win for sure. And obviously the last piece is just being aware. Customers are shaped by culture. We all are. Employees are shaped by culture. Our investors are shaped by culture. Everybody's shaped by what's going on in the narrative, right? ChatGPT is a cultural phenomenon right now. It's not a practical value-driving thing just yet. It is driving some value at parts, but it will be. But that phenomenon begins to shape every conversation that you're having in your executive meetings, in your boardroom, with customers. And so for me, the reason I focus on these things, I go, because if you can get at a point and understand these four things, then you can start to craft strategy from that and growth strategy from that and go, okay, what in my company needs to change or shift? Where do I need innovation based on things that are evolving in the culture and the way people interact with, products, brands, or their cell phones or musicians or other things that are going on. And so for me, that's, when I think about those 4 C's, I think they're essential to getting to really good growth strategy and or at times understanding maybe why you've matured and peaked in the business if you get at this. So that's why those 4 C's have been so important to me. I've used them at almost every company I've come into to say, hey, listen, as a leadership team, let's find our narrative. Let's find, what's most important to the customer in this value proposition. Is it speed of delivery? Is it design? Is it service? What's most important? What's going on in the competitive landscape? What are they best at in this space? And then what's happening in the culture that we can tap into so that we look connected for the things that all of us are talking about.
This focus on cultural shifts has big implications. For instance, across all sectors, from retail to food, fashion, consumer goods, and mobility, a commitment to sustainable products and practices is proving to be core to future-proofing your business strategy. Brian shares more on why this matters for today's consumers and tomorrow's future leaders.
If you think about what's happening from a sustainability perspective, I think what's good, right, from this view is that everything that's happening in the world and the care and the concern of consumers and companies is all focused, right, in the world of going, look, let's be good stewards as well as being, profitable producers. And so I think there's room for both of those things to exist, right? We've seen a lot of companies successfully emerge that have care and concern for humanity, care and concern for the planet, care and concern for, diversity and inclusion, and still remain and still be successful. And so, I don't think there's ever a world where in the future profit has to override the responsibilities of organizations to be good citizens in their communities, in their neighborhoods, in their countries. I think, back to sophistication, just right, of retail and of operating a company, I just think things have gotten more sophisticated. So those things, that's harder to do. It's harder when I can't just be single-minded focus on driving shareholder return for the bottom line, but I also have to think about, being responsible. But I don't think we're going to step back from that, particularly because the rising generation of leaders, which are now our millennials and, in 5 to 10 years will be Gen Z consumers, is like these are things they care about innately as human beings. And they've learned to care about those things innately, maybe different than, their predecessors did who are learning after the fact.
That's our show. The Design Mind Frogcast was brought to you by Frog, a leading global creative consultancy that is part of Capgemini Invent. Check today's show notes for transcripts and more from our conversation. We really want to thank our guest, Brian Beitler, founder of the video commerce platform Soon and general manager of Live Shop Ventures for Curate Retail Group, for sharing his perspectives on the future of a video-fueled, story-driven retail industry. We also want to thank you, dear listener. If you like what you heard, tell your friends. Rate and review to help others find us, and be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Find lots more to think about from our Global Frog team at frog.co/designmind. That's frog.co. Follow Frog on Twitter at @frogdesign and @frog_design on Instagram. And if you have any thoughts about the show, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out at frog.co/contact. Thanks for listening. Now go make your mark.